They say silence is the loudest scream, but in Emily Vance's case it was a weapon. When her husband threw her out of their penthouse for a younger, wealthier woman, Emily didn't beg. She didn't cry. She simply zipped her suitcase and walked into the rain. 2 hours later, a blurry video of her eating a burger next to a homeless man in a dusty diner was uploaded to TikTok. The world laughed at her. Her ex-husband toasted his champagne to her downfall. But they missed one detail. The man in the tattered coat wasn't homeless. He was Brian Sterling, the reclusive billionaire who owned the very bank her husband worked for, and he had just decided that Emily Vance was about to become the most powerful woman in the city. The sound of the suitcase zipper closing was like a gunshot in the quiet, sterile luxury of the penthouse. Zzzzt. Emily Vance didn't look up. She kept her eyes focused on the handle of the old battered Samsonite that looked offensively out of place against the Italian marble floors. It was the only piece of luggage she had brought into this marriage 5 years ago, and fittingly, it was the only thing she was taking out of it. "Are you done yet?" Liam's voice cut through the air, dripping with that particular brand of impatience that comes from a man who believes his time is worth more than other people's feelings. "Jessica is going to be here in 20 minutes to redecorate the foyer. I don't want your clutter killing the vibe." Emily stood up. She smoothed the front of her simple gray cardigan. She looked at Liam. He was handsome objectively. The kind of handsome that graces the cover of Forbes 30 Under 30. Jawline sharp enough to cut glass eyes that used to look at her with adoration, but now held nothing but cold calculation. He was the CEO of Vance Tech, a rising star in the Seattle tech scene, and she was just the stepping stone he had used to get there. "The prenup is clear, Emily." Liam sighed, checking his Rolex, a gift she had saved 3 years to buy him. "You get the car, the Honda, not the Porsche, obviously, and a severance check. I've already wired $50,000 to your account. Consider it a thank you for the domestic years." The domestic years. That's what he called the nights she stayed up editing his pitch decks. The months she worked 2 jobs so he could quit his to code. The time she nursed him through the pneumonia that almost killed him before his first Series A funding round. Emily opened her mouth to speak, to scream, to remind him that without her Vance Tech would still be a scribbled idea on a cocktail napkin. But then she saw it, the slight smirk on his face. He wanted a reaction. He wanted the crazy ex-wife narrative. He wanted her to break a vase so he could tell Jessica, "See, she's unstable." Emily closed her mouth. She took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the expensive sandalwood reed diffusers she had bought last week. She grabbed the handle of the suitcase. "Not even a goodbye." Liam scoffed, uncrossing his arms. "God, you're cold." "That's always been your problem, Emily. You have no passion. Jessica has fire." Emily walked past him. As she reached the heavy oak door, she paused. She turned, looking not at him but through him at the panoramic view of the rainy Seattle skyline. "The Honda has a flat tire," she said softly. Her voice was steady, terrifyingly calm. "I'll walk." "Walk!" Liam laughed, a harsh bark of a sound. "It's pouring, Emily. Don't be a martyr. Take the money and call an Uber." She didn't answer. She opened the door, stepped into the hallway, and let the door click shut behind her. The silence that followed her down the elevator was heavy. The concierge, a man named George, whom she had brought coffee to every morning for 3 years, couldn't even meet her eyes. Everyone knew. In a building like the Meridian, gossip traveled faster than the elevators. The billionaire boy wonder was trading in his starter wife for the daughter of a senator. It was a cliché as old as time, but it felt like a fresh amputation to Emily. She stepped out onto the street. The Seattle rain wasn't a drizzle. It was a deluge. It soaked through her cardigan in seconds, plastering her hair to her skull. She shivered, the cold seeping into her bones. She had $50,000 in the bank. It was a lot of money to some, but in this city with no job, no apartment, and a resume with a 5-year gap labeled housewife. It was a ticking clock. She walked. She didn't know where she was going. She dragged the suitcase over puddles, the wheels rattling against the wet pavement. Cars splashed her as they zoomed by. She walked past the high-end boutiques where she used to shop for Liam's suits. She walked past the restaurant where he proposed. She walked until her legs burned and the skyline changed from glass towers to brick warehouses. She found herself in Pioneer Square, the older, grittier part of the city. Her stomach growled a violent reminder that she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning when she found the texts on Liam's phone. She saw a neon sign flickering through the rain. The Rusty Spoon. It wasn't a retro chic diner. It was an actual dive. The windows were greasy and the O in spoon was burnt out. But it was warm and it smelled of frying onions and stale coffee. Emily pushed the door open. A bell jingled. The place was mostly empty. A few truckers in the corner. A tired waitress wiping down the counter. And in the back near the radiator, a single booth occupied by an old man hunched over a newspaper. Every other table had chairs stacked on top of them. The floor was being mopped. "We're closing the section, hon," the waitress called out not unkindly. "Only seats open are at the counter or—" She gestured vaguely to the back. Emily didn't want the counter. She wanted to hide. She wanted a corner where she could dry off and figure out how to survive. She looked at the old man. He wore a tweed coat that had seen better decades, patched at the elbows with mismatched fabric. His hair was a shock of white static, and he was muttering to himself as he circled something in the paper with a red pen. He looked like the kind of person society looked through, invisible, discarded, just like her. Emily walked over to his booth. "Excuse me," she said, her voice hoarse. "Do you mind if I sit? It's the only table left." The old man didn't look up immediately. He finished circling a word. Then he slowly raised his head. His face was a map of wrinkles weathered by what looked like years of hard sun and harder luck. But his eyes were startling. They were a piercing electric blue, alert, sharp, and dangerously intelligent. He looked at her wet clothes. He looked at the suitcase. "You look like a drowned rat, girly," he rasped. His voice sounded like gravel in a blender. "I feel like one," Emily admitted. He kicked the seat opposite him. "Sit, but don't drip on my crossword. I'm stuck on 4 down." Emily collapsed into the vinyl seat. "Thank you." She didn't know it yet, but that invitation was worth more than the $50,000 sitting in her bank account. She had just sat down at the table of the most dangerous man in global finance. The waitress, whose name tag read Barb, came over with a pot of coffee. She gave the old man a look that was a mix of pity and annoyance. "Refill, Brian. And what does the lady want?" "Just coffee, please," Emily said. "And, do you have a menu? Kitchen closes in 10? Barb said, pouring the steaming black liquid into a chipped mug for Emily. "I'll take the number 3, the old man, Brian said, "and put her meal on my tab." Emily blinked. She looked at Brian. "Oh, no, I can pay. I have money." Brian snorted. "You have just left my husband's eyes, kid. Keep your money. You're going to need it for a lawyer. Barb, give her a burger and fries. Extra grease." Emily froze. "How did you know?" Brian tapped the side of his nose. "I watch people. It's a hobby. You got a suitcase, no ring on the finger, but a tan line where one used to be, and you're wearing shoes that cost more than this building, but you're walking in the rain. Doesn't take a genius." Emily looked down at her hand. The pale band of skin on her ring finger was glaring. She felt a lump rise in her throat, but she swallowed it down. "He kicked me out," she whispered. She didn't know why she was telling this stranger. Maybe because he was the first person to look at her without judgment all day. "His loss," Brian grunted, returning to his paper. "What's 4 down 7 letters? The end of an empire." "Collapse," Emily suggested instinctively. Brian paused. He wrote it in. "Fits. Smart girl." For 20 minutes they sat in silence. It was a comfortable silence. Emily ate the burger like she was starving. Brian drank his coffee and watched her with those unnerving blue eyes. Then the bell above the door jingled again. A gust of cold wind and loud laughter blew into the diner. Emily's spine stiffened. She knew that laugh. "Oh my God, Liam, this place is authentic," a high, trilling voice squealed. "It's so gritty. I love it. We have to take a selfie for the Real Seattle campaign." Emily slouched down in the booth, wishing she could dissolve into the vinyl. It was Liam and Jessica, of all the gin joints in all the towns. They were dressed for a night out, Liam in a bespoke trench coat, Jessica in a shimmering silver dress that probably cost more than Emily's severance check. They were accompanied by two other men, tech investors Emily recognized from the company parties she used to plan. "Table for 4, Liam commanded, snapping his fingers at Barb. "We're closing, sir," Barb said, looking unimpressed. "Take out only." "Nonsense," Liam said, pulling out a $100 bill. "We just need 20 minutes. We're celebrating. Vance Tech just acquired the patents we needed." Barb hesitated, looking at the bill. Money talks even in the rusty spoon. "Fine. Back corner," she sighed. They walked toward the back, toward Emily. Emily pulled her cardigan up, trying to hide her face, but the suitcase gave her away. It was sitting in the aisle. "Watch it!" Jessica sneered, nearly tripping over it. She looked down. "Who brings luggage to a—" Jessica stopped. She peered into the booth. Her eyes went wide. A cruel, delightful smile spread across her face. "Liam?" she gasped, grabbing his arm. "Look!" Liam turned. When he saw Emily, his face went through a complex journey of shock, annoyance, and finally amusement. "Emily!" He laughed loud enough for the whole diner to hear. "I told you to call an Uber, not move into a homeless shelter." The two investors chuckled nervously. Emily slowly sat up. Her dignity was tattered, but she grabbed the shreds of it. "Hello, Liam. Jessica." "This is priceless," Jessica said, pulling out her phone. The latest iPhone, naturally. She started recording. "The ex-wife dining with the locals. Who's your friend, Emily? Did you find a new sugar daddy already?" She pointed the camera at Brian. Brian didn't look up from his paper. He took a slow sip of his coffee. "Leave us alone," Emily said, her voice shaking slightly. "Oh, come on, we're just being friendly," Liam said, stepping closer. He looked at Brian with open disgust. "Hey, old-timer, she's used to high maintenance. Hope you have a big cardboard box." "Liam, stop," Emily said, standing up. "Just go away." "Or what?" Liam sneered. "You gonna throw a fry at me? You're pathetic, Emily. You're nothing without me. Look at you, eating grease with a bum." Brian finally moved. He folded his newspaper neatly. He placed his red pen on the table. "Young man," Brian said. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried a strange resonance. It cut through the kitchen noise. "I'd suggest you lower your voice. You're disturbing my coffee." Liam blinked, then burst out laughing. "Did the hobo just speak to me? Do you know who I am? I'm Liam Vance. I could buy this block and bulldoze it just to get rid of the smell of you." Jessica giggled, keeping the phone steady. "Tell him, baby." Brian looked at Liam. Really looked at him. It was the look a lion gives a gazelle before the pounce, utterly devoid of fear. "Liam Vance." Brian tested the name. "CEO of Vance Tech. Recently secured Series B funding from Sterling Holloway Holdings." Liam froze. The color drained slightly from his face. "How do you know about Sterling Holloway? That's not public knowledge yet." "I read the paper," Brian said, tapping the crossword. "Now get out of my light. You're blocking the view." Liam's arrogance warred with his confusion, but arrogance won. "You're crazy. Come on, Jess. Let's go somewhere that doesn't smell like failure." Liam leaned in close to Emily, whispering in her ear. "You fit in here, Emily. Trash with trash." He knocked her suitcase over as he turned around. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. Clothes spilled out, her underwear, her shirts onto the dirty floor. Jessica laughed, zoomed in on the spilled clothes, and then turned the camera to herself. "So sad. Hat divorce goals." They swept out of the diner, leaving Emily standing there, humiliated, tears finally spilling over. She dropped to her knees to gather her things. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed to Brian. "I'm so sorry." Brian didn't help her pack. He just watched the door where Liam had exited. His expression had shifted. The bemused old man was gone. In his place was something colder, harder. He pulled a sleek black smartphone from the inside pocket of his tattered coat, a device that looked more advanced than anything Liam owned. He dialed a number. "It's Brian," he said into the phone. "Get the car, and get me the file on Liam Vance. Yes, the whole file. I want to know where he banks, who his auditors are, and what he had for breakfast. We're going to war." Emily looked up, holding a muddy blouse. "What?" Brian looked down at her. He offered her a hand. The skin was rough, but the grip was like iron. "Get up, Emily," Brian said. "You're done crying. Tonight you dine with a bum. Tomorrow you're going to help me destroy a CEO. The rain was still hammering against the roof of the Rusty Spoon when the headlights swept across the greasy front window. These weren't the yellow dim beams of a taxi or a police cruiser. They were stark clinical LED beams that cut through the darkness like surgical lasers. A car pulled up to the curb, idling silently. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom, painted a midnight blue so deep it looked black in the storm. The diner fell silent. Even the kitchen staff stopped scraping the grill. In this part of Seattle, where the streets smelled of rain and rust, a car like that was as alien as a spaceship. The driver's door opened. A man stepped out holding a massive black umbrella. He was built like a vending machine, wearing a suit that cost more than Emily's entire wardrobe. He walked to the diner door, unbothered by the deluge, and pushed it open. He scanned the room, ignoring the gaping truckers, and locked eyes with Brian. "Sir," the driver said, his voice a deep rumble, "the timeline has accelerated." Brian stood up. He brushed a crumb from his tattered tweed coat. He looked at Emily, who was still clutching her muddy blouse, staring at the car in disbelief. "Grab your suitcase, Emily," Brian said. "Silas will put it in the trunk." I can't get in that car," Emily stammered, looking down at her soaked cardigan and muddy jeans. "I'll ruin the leather." Brian laughed, a dry, crackling sound. "My dear, I own the company that tans the leather. I think we can manage a few mud stains. Now move. We have work to do." Silas, the driver, gently took the broken suitcase from her hand. "Allow me, ma'am." Emily felt like she was moving underwater. She followed Brian out into the rain. Silas held the umbrella over her as she slid into the back seat. The interior smelled of rich mahogany and aged scotch. It was warm, silent, and terrifyingly safe. As the car pulled away, gliding over the potholes that had rattled her teeth just an hour ago, Emily looked out the tinted window. She saw the Rusty Spoon disappear into the gray mist. "Brian," she whispered, turning to the old man who was now tapping furiously on his high-tech phone. "Who are you? Really?" Brian didn't look up. "Liam called me a bum. He judged the book by the dust on the cover. A fatal error in business." He tapped the screen one last time and handed the phone to her. "Look." Emily took the phone. It was open to a financial news app. The headline read, "Sterling Hathaway Holdings announces hostile takeover of Omnicorp." "You're Brian Sterling," she breathed. The name was legendary. He was the ghost of Wall Street. He hadn't been photographed in public since 2008. Rumors said he was dead or living on a private island. No one knew he spent his Tuesdays doing crosswords in a dive diner in Pioneer Square. "I like to stay grounded." Brian shrugged, pulling a bottle of sparkling water from a hidden compartment. "Keeps the mind sharp. If you only eat at Michelin-star restaurants, you forget what hunger looks like. And hunger is the only thing that moves markets." Suddenly Emily's own phone buzzed, and then it buzzed again, and again. A continuous violent vibration against her leg. She pulled it out. Her notifications were a blur of red. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. She opened TikTok. The video was already on the For You page. It was Jessica's video. The caption read, "When the trash takes itself out. Ex-wifey dining with the bums." Sad. Divorce. Upgrade. It had 4.2 million views. It had been uploaded 90 minutes ago. Emily's hand shook as she scrolled through the comments. LMAO, look at her hair. Bro, Liam Vance dodged a bullet. She looks unstable. Is she eating leftovers off that old guy's plate? Yikes! This is what happens when you marry for money and get dumped. Back to the streets. Tears pricked her eyes hot and fast. The humiliation was physical. It felt like a punch to the gut. The world was laughing at her. Liam had won. He hadn't just divorced her. He had destroyed her reputation globally in under 2 hours. Don't turn it off. Brian's voice cut through the silence of the car. Emily looked up, tears streaming down her face. I can't watch this. They hate me. They think I'm crazy. Good, Brian said cold-bloodedly. Let them. How is that good? She cried. Because... Brian leaned forward, his blue eyes icy. A crazy, broken ex-wife is not a threat. Liam thinks you are finished. He thinks you are debris. He will stop looking over his shoulder. And when your enemy stops looking, that is when you strike. He took the phone from her hand and tossed it onto the seat. Liam Vance is currently celebrating. He believes his stock is about to skyrocket because of the buzz. He loves the fame. He's a narcissist, but he forgot one thing. What? Emily asked, wiping her eyes. He forgot who built the engine, Brian said softly. I've been watching Vance Tech for months. The financials don't make sense. The user growth is too consistent. The code updates are too sparse for the output they claim. Brian paused, watching her reaction. You were his first employee, Emily. You were the CFO before he hired that Ivy League puppet. You know where the bodies are buried. Emily went still. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp memory. The server farms in Nevada, she whispered. Brian raised an eyebrow. Go on. He claims he's using AI to optimize data traffic, Emily said, her voice gaining strength. That's his pitch for the Series B funding, the Vance algorithm. But it doesn't exist. He's manually routing traffic through cheap servers in Nevada to simulate speed during demos. It's a mechanical Turk. It's fraud. Brian smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a shark sensing blood in the water. And there it is, Brian whispered. The silver bullet. The car slowed down. They were passing through massive iron gates. They wound up a long driveway lined with ancient cedar trees until a sprawling, brutalist mansion came into view, perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Welcome to the war room, Brian said as the car stopped. Emily, he said before opening the door. You have a choice. You can take a check for $5 million right now, walk away, and live a quiet life in obscurity. I'll make the video disappear. Emily looked at the mansion. She thought about Liam's laugh. She thought about Jessica sneering at her suitcase. She thought about the 5 years she had poured into a man who treated her like an accessory. Or, she asked, or, Brian said, you come inside. We clean you up, and we burn his kingdom to the ground, brick by brick, while the whole world watches. Emily didn't hesitate. She reached for the door handle. I don't want the money, Brian, she said. I want his head. The next 72 hours were a blur of activity that Emily would later describe as corporate boot camp. Brian's estate, the glass cliff, was less of a home and more of a command center. Emily was given a wing of the house, but she barely saw it. She spent her time in the library, which had been converted into a strategy room. 3 massive monitors displayed the real-time stock ticker of Vance Tech's social media sentiment analysis and the bank records Brian's private investigators had pulled. But the first order of business wasn't strategy. It was armor. If you are going to kill a king, you must look like a queen, Brian had declared on the first morning. He brought in a team, not just a stylist but an image consultant who had worked with prime ministers. They didn't just change her clothes, they changed her silhouette. Gone were the soft cardigans and the sensible flats. They dressed her in sharp architectural pieces. Yves Saint Laurent blazers with padded shoulders, tailored trousers that made her legs look miles long, and stilettos that sounded like ice picks hitting the floor. They cut her hair into a severe chic bob that framed her face and highlighted her cheekbones. When Emily looked in the mirror 3 days later, she didn't recognize the woman staring back. The sad, discarded housewife was gone. In her place was a weapon made of silk and steel. But the real transformation happened in the library. Emily sat across from Brian and his team of forensic accountants. "Here," Emily said, pointing to a line on the spreadsheet projected on the wall. "He lists consulting fees to a company called Apex Solutions, $200,000 a month." "Shell company?" Brian asked, sipping his tea. "Worse," Emily said. "It's his gambling debt. Liam plays high-stakes poker in Macau online. He's funneling investor money to pay off the triads. I found the IP address linkage on his old laptop he left in the attic 6 months ago." The head accountant, a woman named Sarah with glasses thick enough to see the future, gasped. "If this gets out, he goes to federal prison. Not just bankruptcy. Prison." "Not yet." Brian held up a hand. "If we leak this now, the stock crashes. He claims he has a gambling problem, goes to rehab, and spins a redemption arc. The public loves a comeback story. We need to kill him when he is at his highest, when the fall will be fatal." "The gala," Emily said. The room went quiet. The Pacific Tech Innovators Gala was happening this Saturday. It was the Oscars of the tech world. Liam was the keynote speaker. He was expected to announce the launch of the Vance algorithm and open the next round of investment aiming for a $1 billion valuation. He's going to take pre-orders for the software, Emily realized. He's going to take millions in deposits for a product that doesn't exist. "Exactly," Brian said. "He's creating a Ponzi scheme, and we are going to let him." "We are?" Emily asked. "We need him to commit the fraud publicly," Brian said. "We need him to sign the contracts. Once he takes the money, the trap shuts." Brian slid a black envelope across the mahogany table toward Emily. "I received an invitation. Usually I throw these in the fire. But this year Sterling Holloway is sending a representative." Emily stared at the envelope. "You want me to go?" "He'll have me thrown out. He thinks I'm a joke." "He thinks Emily Vance is a joke," Brian corrected. "He thinks his ex-wife is crying in a Motel 6. He is not expecting Emily Sterling." Emily looked up sharply. "Sterling." "My niece," Brian lied smoothly, his eyes twinkling. "From my estranged brother's side. Educated in Switzerland, private ruthless. The new vice president of acquisitions for my firm." "You want me to fake an identity?" "No." Brian stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the stormy ocean. "I want you to be yourself, but I'm giving you my name as a shield. With the name Sterling, no one will dare throw you out. Not even Liam. Especially not when you're holding the checkbook he desperately needs." Emily ran her finger over the embossed gold lettering on the invitation. "He's going to recognize me," she said. "Will he?" Brian turned back. "He never really looked at you, Emily. He looked at what you did for him. Besides," Brian gestured to the monitors. On the screen, a new video from Liam was trending. He was sitting in his penthouse, Jessica draped over his shoulder. "To all the haters," Liam was saying to the camera, raising a glass of champagne. "Success is the best revenge. While some people are eating burgers in the dirt, we're changing the world. Catch me at the gala this Saturday. Big news coming." Emily watched Liam's smug face. She felt a cold calm settle over her. "He thinks he's untouchable," she said. "Hubris?" Brian noted. "The gods punish it. We are just the delivery service." "Okay," Emily said, standing up. She smoothed her new blazer. "I'll do it, but I need one thing." "Name it." "I need the Honda," she said. Brian frowned. "The Honda. We have a fleet of cars." "No." Emily's eyes hardened. "He made a point of letting me keep the Honda because he thought it was trash. I want to arrive in it, but I want you to modify it." Brian's lips curled into a grin. "Modify it how?" "I want the engine of a Ferrari inside it," she said. And I want it painted matte black. I want to drive his trash right up to the red carpet." Brian chuckled. Done. The internet was still buzzing about the bag lady of Pioneer Square. But the news cycle moved fast. The rumors of the Vance Tech announcement had taken over. Inside the grand ballroom of the Seattle Fairmont, the elite of the tech world were gathering. Champagne flowed like water. The lighting was purple and gold Vance Tech colors. Liam Vance stood at the center of the room wearing a velvet tuxedo. Jessica was on his arm wearing a dress that was more diamonds than fabric. They were holding court. "Yes, the pre-valuation is insane," Liam was telling a group of investors from Silicon Valley. "We're looking at a unicorn status by midnight." "What about the ex-wife?" one investor asked, chuckling. "Saw the video. Brutal." Liam waved his hand dismissively. "Sad story. Mental health issues. We tried to help her, but some people just can't handle the altitude." Jessica giggled. "She's probably watching the live stream from a shelter." Suddenly the murmur in the room changed. It wasn't the polite chatter of networking. It was a wave of silence that started at the entrance and rippled inward. Heads turned. The crowd parted. "Who is that?" someone whispered. "Is that Sterling?" Liam frowned and turned toward the door. Walking into the ballroom was a woman who looked like she owned the oxygen everyone else was breathing. She wore a floor-length gown of liquid midnight blue silk, backless and daring. Her makeup was flawless, her bob sharp as a razor. She didn't look like a victim. She looked like a predator. She was flanked by 2 large security guards, one of whom was Silas. Liam squinted. The woman looked familiar, but the aura was wrong. This woman radiated power. This woman held her head high. She walked straight toward the VIP section where the heavy hitters sat. The organizers scrambled to clear a path. "Who is she?" Jessica whispered, her grip tightening on Liam's arm. The woman stopped 10 feet away from Liam. She turned slowly, her eyes locking onto his. The room held its breath. "Hello, Liam," she said. Her voice was amplified by the acoustics of the room, clear and steady. Liam's glass slipped from his fingers. It shattered on the floor, splashing champagne onto his velvet shoes. "Emily!" he choked out. A shockwave went through the crowd. Phones came out instantly. Live streams started up. "You?" Liam stammered. "What are you doing here, security? Get this trash out of here!" He gestured frantically to the venue security. Emily didn't flinch. She simply raised a hand, holding up a platinum invitation. "I'm here representing Sterling Hathaway Holdings," she said, her voice cutting through his panic. "As the new vice chair of the audit committee, we have some questions about your Series B funding, Liam, and we thought we'd ask them publicly." She smiled. It was the smile Brian had taught her. "Shall we sit?" From the shadows of the mezzanine balcony, Brian Sterling watched through a pair of opera glasses, a small smile playing on his lips. "Let the games begin," he whispered. The ballroom was a shark tank, and for the first time in her life, Emily wasn't the bait. She was the shark. Security did not come. The head of venue security, a burly man named Dave, who used to bounce at the club where Liam picked up waitresses, took one look at Emily's platinum invitation and the 2 mountains of muscle standing behind her, and shook his head at Liam. "She's got a AAA pass, Mr. Vance," Dave muttered into his radio loud enough for the VIP circle to hear. "Unless she throws a punch, she stays. Venue policy." Liam turned a shade of red that clashed violently with the purple lighting. He adjusted his velvet tuxedo, his smile straining at the edges like cheap fabric. "Fine," Liam hissed, leaning in close to Emily. "Stay. Watch me make history. But don't think for a second that a fancy dress and a forged invite make you one of us. You're still the woman who coupons for toothpaste." Emily didn't blink. She took a flute of champagne from a passing tray, Dom Perignon Vintage 2008. "And you're still the man who needs me to fix his spreadsheet formulas, Liam," she said coolly. "Make sure you enunciate during the keynote. You have a tendency to mumble when you're lying." She turned her back on him. It was a calculated move. In high society, turning your back is more violent than a slap. She walked straight toward Marcus Thorne, the lead investor from Horizon Capital. Thorne was a man who ate startups for breakfast. He had been skeptical of Vance Tech, but Liam had charmed him. "Mr. Thorne," Emily said, extending a hand. "Emily Sterling. We haven't met properly, though. I believe I wrote the risk assessment analysis you received last Tuesday." Thorne's eyebrows shot up. "You wrote that, the one flagging the server latency issues in Nevada?" "The very same." Emily lied effortlessly, channeling Brian's confidence. "My uncle, Mr. Sterling, is very concerned about the scalability of the Vance algorithm. We're hearing chatter." Chatter. Thorne leaned in. The smell of fear was better than perfume in this room. "About the processing power." Emily lowered her voice. "Quantum-level output on standard silicon chips. It defies physics. Unless, of course, the data isn't being processed by AI at all." Thorne's eyes narrowed. He looked across the room at Liam, who was frantically whispering to Jessica. "If he's faking the demo," Thorne murmured, "then Horizon Capital is buying a very expensive paperweight." Emily finished his sentence. "Watch the live feed latency, Mr. Thorne. If it lags by more than 200 milliseconds, it's not AI. It's manual routing." Thorne nodded slowly. The seed was planted. Across the room, Jessica was losing her composure. She marched over to Emily, her silver dress rustling aggressively. "Stop it," Jessica snapped. "I don't know who you slept with to get that dress, but you're ruining Liam's night. You're just jealous because I have the ring and you have—" "What?" "A sugar daddy in a nursing home." Emily looked at Jessica, really looked at her. She saw the insecurity behind the heavy makeup. She saw a girl who thought she had won a prize, not realizing the prize was a ticking bomb. "Jessica," Emily said, her voice almost gentle, "check the offshore accounts." "What?" Jessica blinked. "The Cayman's account Liam opened last month," Emily said. "The one he told you was for tax optimization. Ask him whose name is on the signatory line. Hint it's not yours, and it's not his." It was a bluff. Or was it Brian's files were thorough? "You're crazy," Jessica scoffed, but her hand went instinctively to her phone. Suddenly the lights dimmed. A booming bass note shook the floor. A spotlight hit the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed, "the visionary, the architect of the future, the CEO of Vance Tech, Liam Vance." Applause erupted. It was loud but not thunderous. The whispers Emily had started were spreading like a virus. Liam bounded onto the stage. He looked every inch the tech messiah. He wore a headset microphone. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the Vance Tech logo. "Thank you," Liam shouted, spreading his arms. "Tonight we don't just launch a product, we launch a revolution." He began his pitch. It was slick. He used all the buzzwords: neural networks, deep learning, hyperscalability. Emily stood at the back near the sound booth. She took out her phone. "Status," she texted. "Ready when you are." Brian's reply came instantly. On stage, Liam was reaching the crescendo. "They told me it was impossible," he said, wiping a fake tear from his eye. "They told me I was dreaming. But tonight I want to show you the Vance algorithm in action. No pre-recorded videos. A live test." The crowd murmured appreciatively. Live demos were risky. "I'm going to ask the AI to optimize the entire logistics network of a mid-sized shipping company in real time," Liam announced. "A task that would take a team of humans a week. The Vance algorithm will do it in 10 seconds. He turned to the massive screen. A complex map of shipping routes appeared. "System," Liam commanded. "Optimize." A loading bar appeared. "Processing." Emily watched the screen. She watched the loading bar, and then she raised her hand. She didn't shout. She just raised her hand high, the diamond bracelet Brian had lent her catching the spotlight. Liam froze. He saw her. "Questions are for the end," he joked nervously. "This isn't a question, Liam. Emily's voice rang out. She wasn't using a microphone, but she didn't need one. The room was deadly silent. It's a correction. Security, Liam pointed at her. Mr. Thorne, Emily shouted, turning to the investor. The latency. Look at the timestamp. Thorne looked at the screen. Wait, he shouted. The timestamp on the server request. It's from yesterday. The room gasped. Glitch! Liam yelled, sweat visible on his forehead. Just a display glitch. Is it? Emily walked forward, the crowd parting for her like the Red Sea. Or is it because you can't optimize live because there is no AI? Liam, it's just a script running a pre-solved scenario. You're bitter, Liam screamed, losing his cool completely. She's a bitter ex-wife. Don't listen to her. Prove me wrong, Emily challenged, standing right at the edge of the stage. Run a new dataset, right now. I have a dataset from Sterling Holloway. 10 terabytes of raw financial data. Optimizing for tax loopholes. She held up a USB drive. Plug it in, Liam, she said. If the algorithm is real, it will eat this for breakfast. If it's fake, the system will crash. We can't just plug in external drives, Liam stammered. Security protocols. I waive the protocols. A voice boomed from the back of the room. The double doors swung open. Silas stood there pushing a wheelchair. And in the wheelchair sat Brian Sterling. He wasn't wearing his diner rags. He was wearing a tuxedo that looked like it was cut from the fabric of the night sky. He looked frail, but his eyes were burning with terrifying energy. Mr. Sterling, Liam whispered. The color drained from his face entirely. I am the lead investor in your Series B round, Brian said, his voice raspy but amplified by the silence. I want to see the product I bought. Plug in the drive, Liam. There was no way out. The cameras were rolling, the investors were watching. Liam looked at Emily. He looked at the USB drive in her hand. Fine, he spat. Give it to me. He snatched the drive. He walked to the console laptop. He plugged it in. Optimize, Liam said, his voice trembling. The screen flashed. The loading bar appeared. 0%, 1%. And then the screen turned bright red. The red screen didn't display an error message. It didn't say system failure. It displayed a video feed. The audience gasped. On the massive screen behind Liam, a grainy low-light video appeared. It showed a warehouse. Rows and rows of servers were visible. But there were no blinking lights. No hum of cooling fans. Instead, there were people. Dozens of people sitting at long tables in the middle of the server room, furiously typing on laptops. What is this? Liam shouted, banging on the console. Cut the feed. Cut it. But the feed stayed. The camera zoomed in on a piece of paper taped to the wall of the warehouse. It read, Vance Tech Manual Input Team, Shift 3. That's Nevada. Emily said, her voice calm, amplified by the stunned silence of the room. That's your AI, Liam. It's a click farm. You're routing the optimization request to underpaid workers in a warehouse who are manually inputting data into standard spreadsheets. No, Liam screamed. It's a lie, deep fake. She's hacking me. And this? Emily pointed to the screen again. The video changed. It was a screen recording of a bank transfer. Sender Vance Tech corporate account. Recipient Golden Dragon Casino Macau. Amount $2,500,000. Reference Liam V. Debt settlement. The room erupted. It wasn't polite murmurs anymore. It was chaos. Investors were shouting into their phones, "Sell, sell everything." Flashbulbs were blinding. Reporters were surging toward the stage. Jessica, standing off to the side, looked at the screen. She looked at the transaction date. It was 2 days ago. The day Liam had told her he couldn't afford to buy her the diamond necklace she wanted because liquidity was tied up in R&D. Jessica walked onto the stage. "Liam?" she asked, her voice shrill. "Not now, Jess." Liam pushed her aside, trying to cover the projector lens with his jacket. "It's a glitch. It's all a glitch." Jessica stumbled back in her heels. She looked at the crowd laughing. She looked at Emily standing tall and pristine. Jessica grabbed the microphone from the stand. "He told me he invented it," she shrieked into the mic. "He told me he was a genius. He used my father's connections to get the zoning permits for that warehouse." "Shut up!" Liam roared, turning on her. "You stupid cow, shut up!" The slap echoed through the room. Liam had struck Jessica. Silence fell again. Instant, heavy silence. Liam stared at his hand, horrified. He looked at the audience. Every phone was raised. He had just assaulted a senator's daughter on live stream. I didn't," Liam stammered. Emily stepped onto the stage. She walked past the crying Jessica. She walked up to Liam. He looked small now. The velvet tuxedo looked like a costume. "It's over, Liam," she said softly. "You did this." He whispered, tears mixing with the sweat on his face. "You ruined me." "Why? Because I left you, because I wanted someone better." "No," Emily said. She reached into her clutch and pulled out a piece of paper. It was folded and worn. "Because you stole my code," she said. She unfolded the paper and held it up to the camera. It was a napkin. A cocktail napkin from a bar dated 5 years ago. On it, in blue ink, was a complex algorithm flowchart. It was signed Emily Vance. "The core architecture of the original system," Emily said to the room. "The part that actually did work before you bloated it with fake features. I wrote it. On our first anniversary. I gave it to you as a gift." She dropped the napkin at his feet. "I didn't destroy you because you left me, Liam. I destroyed you because you forgot that I was the one who built you." "Police!" someone shouted from the back. 2 uniformed officers, followed by 3 agents and FBI windbreakers, entered the ballroom. "Liam Vance," one of the agents shouted. "You are under arrest for securities fraud, wire fraud, and embezzlement." Liam backed away. No, I have money, I can fix this." He looked for an exit, but the stage was high and the stairs were blocked by Emily. He looked at her one last time. "Emily, please, help me. I'm your husband." Emily looked at him. She thought about the rain. She thought about the suitcase. She thought about the burger. "My husband died 5 years ago," she said coldly. "You're just a bad investment." The FBI agents swarmed the stage. They cuffed Liam. As they dragged him away, kicking and screaming about his lawyers, the crowd parted for him in disgust. Emily stood alone on the stage. Brian Sterling wheeled himself forward to the base of the stairs. He looked up at her. He gave a single, slow nod. The room was still chaotic, but Emily felt a strange sense of peace. She walked down the stairs. The investors, Thorne included, rushed toward her. "Ms. Sterling," Thorne shouted. "Ms. Sterling, the market is in freefall. Vance Tech is going to zero. What do we do?" Emily stopped. She looked at the panic in their eyes. These were men who controlled billions, yet they looked like lost children. She looked at Brian. He winked. "What do you do?" Emily asked, her voice steady. "You look for the next unicorn, but this time—" She paused, smoothing her silk dress. "Make sure the person running it knows how to code, and maybe check if they treat their wife with respect." She walked past them. "Where are you going?" Thorne asked. "We need a statement." "I'm going to get a burger," Emily said over her shoulder. "I know a great place in Pioneer Square." She walked out of the ballroom. The flashbulbs popped, but she didn't blink. She walked through the lobby, out the front doors, and into the cool night air. The valet was waiting. He was standing next to her Honda. It was matte black now. It rumbled with a low, guttural growl that shook the pavement, the Ferrari engine Brian had installed. It looked like the Batmobile disguised as a commuter car. Silas opened the door for her. "Where to, Ms. Vance?" Silas asked. Emily paused. She looked at the skyline. The rain had stopped. The stars were out. "Not Vance," she said. "Use my maiden name. It's Emily Croft." "Where to Ms. Croft?" "Take me to the Rusty Spoon," she said. "I have a crossword puzzle to finish." 6 months later, the Seattle rain felt different to Emily. It didn't feel cold or oppressive. It felt clean. She stood in the corner office of the newly christened Sterling Croft Ventures. The view was the same one Liam had from his penthouse. In fact, it was 2 floors higher, but the atmosphere was worlds apart. There were no sleek, uncomfortable Italian sofas. There were bookshelves filled with actual books, a whiteboard covered in real equations, and a team of analysts outside her door who were hired for their brains, not their pedigrees. On her desk sat a copy of the Wall Street Journal. The headline read, "Vance Tech CEO sentenced to 12 years for wire fraud." Below it was a smaller picture of Liam. He looked gaunt, stripped of his expensive suits and his arrogance. The article mentioned that Jessica had testified against him in exchange for immunity, though social media had already sentenced her to permanent irrelevance. She was currently shilling detox tea on Instagram to a shrinking follower count. Emily didn't feel happy looking at the photo. She just felt done. The anger had burned out, leaving a fertile ground for something new to grow. "Stop gloating, it causes wrinkles." A gravelly voice came from the doorway. Emily smiled and turned. Brian Sterling was sitting in his wheelchair, but he looked healthier than he had in years. He was wearing a tweed jacket that was new but looked intentionally old. "I'm not gloating," Emily said, tapping the newspaper. "I'm just checking the market data. A lot of capital just freed up." "And where are we putting it?" Brian asked, rolling into the room. "There's a young woman in Detroit," Emily said, picking up a file. "She's developed a water filtration system for low-income housing. She's brilliant, but no bank will touch her because she has no credit history and wears thrift store clothes." Brian's blue eyes twinkled. "Sounds risky." "She reminds me of someone," Emily said softly. Brian chuckled. "Approve the funding, double what she asked for, and send her a tailor." Emily laughed. It was a genuine, full laugh. "I have a meeting with the board in an hour," Emily said, "but I have a stop to make first." "Taking the Ferrari?" Brian asked. "No," Emily said, picking up her purse. "The Honda. It keeps me humble." She drove down to Pioneer Square. The neighborhood was changing slowly. A few more lights, a little less grime, but the soul was still there. She parked in front of the Rusty Spoon. The sign had been fixed. The O in Spoon was no longer burnt out. Emily had bought the building 3 months ago, but she had made the owner Barb promise not to change the menu or the prices. She walked in. The bell jingled. It was busy. Truckers, hipsters, and locals sat side by side. Barb looked up from the grill. "Hey, boss, the usual?" "The usual, Barb," Emily said. She walked to the back booth near the radiator. It was empty. She slid into the vinyl seat, the same one she had collapsed into on the worst night of her life. She pulled out a newspaper and a red pen. She looked at the crossword. 4. Down. A person who rises from the ashes. 7 letters. She uncapped the pen. "Phoenix," she whispered, writing it in. She looked out the window at the rainy street. She thought about the woman who had walked in here with a broken suitcase and a broken heart. That woman had been terrified of silence. She had thought silence meant she was alone. But she had learned the truth. Silence wasn't emptiness. Silence was the deep breath you take before you roar. She took a bite of her burger. It was greasy, salty, and perfect. Emily Croft was finally full. Emily's story isn't just about revenge. It's about the danger of underestimating the person who holds your life together. Liam Vance made the classic mistake of confusing kindness with weakness. He thought that because Emily was silent, she was submissive. He thought that because she carried a suitcase, she had nowhere to go. But he forgot that the person who packs the parachute is the most important person in the plane. When he pushed her out, he didn't realize he was the one falling. In a world that screams for attention, never fear the person who stands quietly in the corner. Fear the moment they decide to stop listening and start acting, because the loudest moves are often made in silence. What a journey, from a rainy street corner to the top of the skyline. If you enjoyed Emily's transformation and think Liam got exactly what he deserved, hit that like button. Right now, let's see if we can get 5,000 likes for sweet revenge. And here is a question for you. If you were Emily, would you have exposed Liam publicly at the gala? Or would you have just taken the money and disappeared? Let me know your battle plan in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. We have a new drama coming next week about a nanny who inherits a fortune, and you won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening.